Y'all love you some Josh Pate. We do too. At Late Kick Josh on Twitter 24/7 Sports. He's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What is up, Pate? How are you?
Well, big night in softball. I heard Dunaway talking about it. Not to be left out of that. In the Tennessee slow pitch men's church league scene, we got a big doubleheader starting at 8:30 Central Time. So a lot on the docket tonight.
8:30. You got the West Coast game?
Can you believe 8 doubleheaders, 8:30 and 9:30?
My God,
we have on a Friday night.
Why do y'all get the West Coast game in Nashville?
We have some seasoned citizens on this team as well, so it's not ideal.
Do you have anybody out there that slides?
I slide. Yeah, a ton of people slide.
Oh That's the way I used to play it too. If I'm playing the game, I'm playing to win, so I will be sliding and diving 100%.
If it's last out down a run, I ain't sliding.
Yeah. Then you're not on my team.
That's why. Look, Lance, that's why you don't have permanently skinned up shins. But I've got room on my softball pants because I also wear pants out there. I got room on my pants for advertising. So if you guys want to talk, we can talk.
Oh, heck yeah.
I've told the story on the air many times. I used to, the easiest money to make in Alabaster as a teenager and early young adult growing up
ought to be good.
Was to umpire slow pitch church league softball 3 nights a week at Buck Creek Park. Easy money until the two Baptist churches played each other. First Baptist, Alabaster, Salura Baptist.
Oh, big argument, I bet.
Oh, my goodness. Because one was a much faster growing church than the other. First Baptist was new buildings all the time. Salura Baptist was the mainstay, but it was they brought some country strong boys at Salura Baptist, and it was a battle all the time. And you had people.
How many conference games did they play though?
Oh, it was 2 times every year, 2 times every year. And if you were on that game, I mean, you'd have the Salura Baptist saying, "Oh, I bet that guy that just hit a home run only shows up Sundays during softball season."
I was going to ask you that. Are there ringers in your league? Are there guys you're like, look, I want Jesus to reach this guy, obviously, but I don't think he makes a huge effort to find Jesus.
Yeah, that happens. And also the best insult I have heard so far is some guy accused another guy of arguing at him in tongues. Never heard it before.
You Pentecostals.
Wow.
My goodness. Yeah.
Y'all need a little, just let these things stream these games live. Give us some entertainment on a Friday.
That is fantastic. Yep, tossed him out for arguing in tongues. I don't know what you said.
That's right.
But you're out.
Hey, this game is not being played after Acts 2. I just want everybody to know.
Hey,
we're a Synoptic Gospels league. We cannot play post Acts 2.
I get pinned as the guy that talks about the West Coast too much, but I do want to start with the Pac-12 because I do think the Pac-12 is fascinating this year. I think there are 4 really good teams out there. If you had to just take a guess and tell me who's going to win the Pac-12 this year, who is it, and do they get to a college football playoff?
Second answer, yes. That's where I lean. First answer is ever so slightly Oregon. I'm like you. I think if I were to do the percentages thing, I think a bunch of them have like a better than 15% chance of winning the conference. The thing I keep paying attention to, I think we talked about this actually last time I was on the show, is everyone's focused on the quarterbacks out there because it's a really deep quarterback league. It's a quality league, not top to bottom, but the first half dozen or so are really good this year. I'm looking at who loaded up on the defensive front. Washington's really good there already. Utah lost some pieces. Oregon is stacking defensive linemen through transfer portal and recruiting. And they've got Dan Lanning as their head coach. I don't doubt that they'll develop there. I think they're probably scaling their capability on the defensive front a little bit faster than folks thought they were. So in a conference all about quarterbacks, I just want to know who's going to get after the quarterback. And I think Oregon may afford themselves the opportunity to do that. And like everyone else now, they've dumped divisions. So it's not north-south anymore. It's just, let's take the 2 best. Are you looking at USC, Oregon, Washington? Who's the 4th you're talking about?
Utah. I mean, if Cam Rising comes back healthy, I mean, Utah. I mean, think about it. 3 years ago, Josh, they played Friday night against Oregon to go to a college football playoff. In the last 2 years, they've won the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, and Oregon State's sitting out there saying, "Hey, we just won double-digit games. Has anyone forgotten about us?" I think it's a fascinating league, and it's a shame that I think a majority of the college football public will just overshadow that with all the realignment talk, because it's a very real possibility those teams are going to announce they're going to be on the move before kickoff of this year. and that will dominate the space.
Yeah, DJ Beaver, don't forget Uunglele there in Corvallis, making it all really interesting. We can circle back to other football talk, but we wanted to get your reaction to the SEC schedule. And for me, I'm not excited about what came out, but it's still a win for me. Anything that was not a permanent long-term plan of an 8-game schedule was going to be a win for me. I did not want that 1-7 model. I don't want to stick at 8 long-term. If I got to go 8 in 2024, I'm okay. What was your initial reaction?
Okay, very clearly, let me state, I want 9 league games in the SEC. So I'm like most people. That's preferable. That's what I want. Here's what I've seen so far. I've seen a lot of the same people screaming, you better play 9 games in June, that would also be screaming, you are what your record says you are in December. And I think that's what scares some people in the SEC room. I don't care if you're bowl eligible. So that part of the argument, I couldn't care less about. I don't care how much money ESPN pays you. That doesn't affect anyone on this call right now. I couldn't care less about it. But the strength of schedule argument, I think, has some validity. Now, whether that's the main reason or not, that's my reason, because I think it's totally fair to look at that playoff committee and say, if we go to 9 league games, already playing the, on average, strongest schedules in the country, are you going to look at 2 losses as 2 losses? Are you going to say you are what your record says you are come Selection Sunday? Or are you going to have a little wiggle room and a little bit of a better understanding that this is not pro sports? You aren't always what your record says you are. A win is not a win. A loss is not a loss. There are differing values to be placed on these things because some of us play a disproportionately tougher schedule than the others. So far, I don't hear enough nuance and context layered into that conversation to make me totally comfortable that, yeah, when we get to that point in an expanded playoff era, everyone's going to understand. There could be a 9-3 in the SEC, more powerful than an 11-1 in whatever the Pac-12 is at that point. Because to this point, that's been sacrilege in college football. You can't put someone above someone with 2 fewer losses than they have. And sometimes I wouldn't, but I would at least like to carve ourselves out the room to debate that instead of going with the you are what your record says you are mentality. So, yeah, I think we all understand we're going to 9 games. I think we get that. But I don't think it was just the worst, craziest decision in the world, even if I personally didn't like the decision.
Josh,
Have we advanced far enough in the AI world that I can just sit there and move my mouth and Taylor can make those words come out of my mouth? That's exactly the way I believe, and I've never been able to phrase it that way. That's perfect.
Really?
That is perfect.
all right. Josh is in Dunaway's head. I don't know if that's a place you want to be, Josh.
Well, I've said that about Dunaway so many times, he owed me one.
That's true.
No,
That's a
I'm
good
just saying
point.
that was
Yes.
perfect.
Josh Pate is with us. Late Kick Josh on Twitter, at Late Kick Josh 24/7 Sports is where you see his work. Go do everything you do for us. Follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his YouTube page, set alerts, give him thumbs up on everything he does. Everything we ask you to do for us, do the same exact thing for Josh. He's like family to us. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline as well. So when the Big Ten, announced that they were going to remove divisions, I said, I'm willing to believe Northwestern has played in their final Big Ten championship game in their history. There's just no path for a Northwestern anymore. Did that happen for SEC teams yesterday? Like, did the door close for Kentucky and Ole Miss and Vandy and people like that?
Well, now I actually didn't think about it that way, but yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And honestly, I could go another 2 minutes on that, but period, end of sentence. Yes, doors closed for them in football, at least permanently. Here's the scarier part. I heard Klatt talking about this. And people have asked me in our mailbag episodes what I thought about what he said, because Klatt's out there suggesting, hey, there could come a time in the interest of value and entertainment where the lowest rungs on your conference ladders are shaved off.
Yeah.
In favor of better rungs, your Vanderbilts, your Missouris, or whatever. And that also is sacrilegious. No one's ever suggested that. And he said, hey, in the future, that may be on the table. And I don't know how, but I'm not sure he's wrong. I'm not sure that they may not be the next layer of the conversation out there, because everyone I listen to from the SEC, it's really funny. They say, we're happy with 16. Okay, we're sticking at 16. They just don't ever say which 16. Everyone takes that which 16 for granted because it's the ones who were already here or the ones that are always going to be here. Ditto in the Big Ten. And I think once you've nationalized your branding, don't think about media markets. Once you've nationalized your branding, and once the SEC as a brand, the Big Ten as a brand matters coast to coast, you're not so focused on pinpoints on a map in terms of acquiring media markets anymore, i.e. the Big Ten doesn't need Rutgers anymore just for the sake of the New Jersey market. If you're watching college football in the Northeast, you're watching the Big Ten anyway because they got all the big properties, and ditto for the SEC. So if we ever get to that world, that would be the next scary proposition. If everyone understands what we're talking about right now to be true, who's the first person in the room to say, well, if everyone knows they're not going to win at the beginning of the season, and it's that way every year, like why would we ever maintain this facade, this charade?
Yeah, and I get all of that, and I'm not saying that there's not something that could change this, but when Klatt said that the other day, I brought up the fact that we know a lot of people in the SEC office. I mean, they're our neighbors, after all. They live here in town. We're around them some. I think everybody I know in the SEC office I've heard use the phrase charter member. That carries a lot of weight in that office. I'm not saying that can't change, but Vandy's a charter member. I mean, there's some charter members, and I can promise you that carries weight in that office.
I think it does too. So I think, let me put it this way. You guys are way closer to it than I am, obviously. I think it has. At the same time, if we hit rewind, I don't know, 7 years, I think there's a ton that we would have said 7 years ago about the sport that matters a lot that we quickly found out only mattered as much as a 9-figure or 10-figure check being put in front of you. And then all of a sudden it's game on and everything's in play. Please understand, for anyone out there misunderstanding me, I would detest if we ever move towards this. So it's more a fear of mine than a hope of mine. But it is a concern I have, because what I'm kind of tired of doing is being caught off guard by all these major announcements and then having to react to it. I'd just rather out front say, hey, let's not do this before we start going down the slope a little too far.
And if Vandy's a charter member, then that puts Missouri in the transfer spot, right?
I mean, over Vandy, yes.
Yeah, but Missouri's been much more relevant.
They have
than Vanderbilt has.
They're Johnny come lately.
But if I'm cutting anybody, it's Missouri.
Josh, when we got to 16 teams in basketball conferences, I thought it was too cluttered. I think 16 is too many in football. With that said, I never thought we would have a 12-team playoff. I'm glad we do have a 12-team playoff. But I've heard the number is 20 ultimately for these power conferences. Do you think we get to 20 one day in the SEC?
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they went past 20. Certainly, I think that's the number we'll end up approaching. And here's what I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a more reactionary model in the SEC, and that would look like this. We're happy at 16. But if the Big Ten goes and adds Washington and Oregon tomorrow, and we have opportunities knocking on our door, if we find out the North Carolinas of the world can get out of their grant of rights agreement, as it turns out, are we going to just ignore that? Because I've gone back to the OU Texas thing with Sankey time and time again. People want to come and tell me Greg Sankey's just money hungry. He's just greedy. He's looking out for himself. He doesn't care about the sport. And I ask what the evidence of that is. And they say, well, look, he went and got OU in Texas when he didn't have to. Well, let's define that. His job is SEC commissioner to act in the best interest of the SEC. It's not like there's a world where OU and Texas knocked on the SEC's door and said, can we come in? If you say no, we're not going anywhere else. We're just going to go back to the Big 12. That was never the case. You get a knock on the door and it's OU Texas saying, we'd love to come in. If you don't have room, I'm sure the Big Ten does. At that point, Greg Sankey has one of two choices. Either let them in or slam the door in their face and then go get told you're fired by your university presidents and chancellors because they went to the Big Ten, and you've got to tell them, yeah, we could have had them. I just didn't really feel like it. And it's the same way in the future. The Big Ten goes and adds 4 or 6 more premier brands, and you've got the opportunity to match it. Do you say no just because you think 16 is a cool-looking number? I'm not sure that would be the case.
All right, tonight, TNT, you'll see Josh play softball, Nashville Church League there.
Closed circuit, though. Closed circuit TV.
Closed circuit, huh? I thought it was TNT, since it was 8:30. I figured
think
it was the late game.
The first game's on True TV.
Oh, is it on True TV?
Yes.
Okay, you'll flip over, right? Josh, it is always fun talking with you. We ask everyone to do what they do for us. Give Josh a thumbs up, like his work, follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his YouTube, and set alerts so you know when he's live. Enjoy the game tonight. Always fun talking to you.
I appreciate it, guys.
If you like that content and other content from the next round, remember to like and subscribe and give us the thumbs up.